All right, it being 7 o'clock, we'll bring tonight's July 24th meeting of council to order. Are there any changes to the agenda from admin? Ms. Naradin. Hang on. Try that. Ms. Naradin.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are no additions or deletions to the agenda at this time.
Thank you very much. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Okay, Perry's not here when you guys got to step up. Councillor Mungo-Swain.
I'll make that motion, Your Worship.
Thank you. All in favor? That carries unanimously. We have 2 items on the consent agenda tonight. So I move that council consent to approve the following agenda items without debate. Items 4A and 4B, regular council meeting minutes of July 10th, 2018, and committee of the whole meeting minutes of July 17th, 2018. Any discussion on the motion? All right. All in favor? That carries unanimously. All right, so we had a bit of a packed agenda tonight. We have 3 public hearings. Looks like 5 bylaws to get through. All right, so at this point we will open up item 5A, bylaw 919-18 Forest Heights Phase 8 Land Use Bylaw Amendment. Looks like Mr. Wong. All right, so I will declare the public hearing open, and the hearing is being held pursuant to sections 230, 606, and 692 of the Municipal Government Act 2000 as amended. And would Ms. Moran, would you like to speak to the motion, please?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to members of council and the public. The purpose of bylaw 919-18 for Forest Heights is to amend the land use bylaw 796-12 of the town of Beaumont, and in particular Schedule A land use district map, by adding DC 119 Forest Heights Phase 8 district to Section 8 land use districts, and redistricting a portion of the northeast quarter section 265024 W4M in the Forest Heights neighborhood from BR Blended Residential District to Direct Control District. Notice of the public hearing was given in writing to the applicant, adjacent property owners, applicable agencies, and Leduc County. The public hearing notice was advertised in the local newspaper on July 13th and 20th, 2018. Any written submissions received are included in the public hearing agenda package, and there's currently nothing to read into the record at this time.
Thank you very much. All right, so as we go through these public hearings tonight, I'd like to request that before everybody that comes up to speak in the mic, state your name clearly for the record. Make sure that the presentations are brief to the point, and we'll ask questions as we go. First up, Mr. Wong.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. The department received an application to redistrict a portion of northeast quarter of Section 26, Township 50, Range 24, and west of the 4th meridian in the Forest Heights neighborhood. The applicant proposes to amend the land use bylaw from BR, Blended Residential District, to Direct Control District, as shown on Schedules A and B of the bylaw. The purpose of the application is to allow the development of smaller single-family and semi-detached housing development. The subject area is currently undeveloped and is located south of 48th Avenue, east of 36th Street, and adjacent to Range Road 241, as shown on Attachment 2 of the report. The proposed direct control district is based on the existing BR Blended Residential District with minor modifications to the lot width and the side yard requirements. The existing BR district does not accommodate the type of development proposed by the applicant, nor do other standard residential districts within the Beaumont Land Use Bylaw. The modifications to the lot width and side yard requirements proposed within the direct control district will be considered within the comprehensive land use bylaw update currently being undertaken. In addition, Section 641, subsection 1 of the Municipal Government Act states that the council of a municipality that has adopted a municipal development plan, if it wishes to exercise particular control over the use and development of land and buildings within an area of the municipality, may in its land use bylaw designate that area as a direct control district. The future development of these lands through the subdivision and development permit process will require compliance with the regulations for this direct control districts and other sections of the land use bylaw. For example, the parking and landscaping requirements. In addition, any future housing development through the building permit process must comply with the Alberta Safety Codes Act and its associated regulations, such as the Alberta Building Codes Regulation and the Fire Code Regulation, in order to meet the safety standards as set out by the province of Alberta. The application was circulated to affected boards and agencies, as well as affected civic departments for comments. No outstanding concerns regarding this application was received. Public notices for the public hearing were sent to Ladue County agencies and adjacent landowners regarding the land use bylaw amendment. An advertisement was published on July the 13th and 20th. No concerns were received to date. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members of council?
Not on.
Councillor Van Newkirk.
Good deal. Yes, maybe a point of clarification through your worship to administration regarding the communication of this proposed change to adjacent landowners. The venue tonight and the public hearing tonight would be to hear from those affected. Can you detail what's done to let those affected landowners know that this change is being proposed tonight, besides the agenda on the website? I think you said there was a letter sent to adjacent landowners?
There was a letter sent to adjacent landowners.
Yeah.
That was sent on July the 13th.
Okay.
To meet the legislative requirements. And yeah.
It's also advertised in the paper for 2 consecutive weeks, July 13th and July 20th, as well as being posted, I believe, on our social media.
Good. So I bring those 2 points up because I think it's important to consider when residents are buying and the whole area is labeled as BR, and you would expect that you're going to have BR across the road. Now there's a proposed change, so I bring this up to point out that this is the venue for those concerns to come forward, and there's none here. Personally, you might have concerns as a landowner, but here we don't have any, so
yep.
That's why I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Are there any other questions from other members of council? Nope. All right, hearing none. Is there a representative of the applicant here to speak this evening towards this?
Thank you, Your Worship. Council, my name is Patrick Shaver. I'm with Valley Developments. We are the developer of Forest Heights. So with me today is Eric Sane with Select Engineering. Select is our planning consultant. We're just going to make a couple points here, some comments that have been brought up, and certainly here to answer any questions that anyone in council may have regarding what we're doing here.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship and Council. Thanks for hearing us today. I guess there was 3 questions that we wanted to clarify before moving forward. The first one is, why are we introducing the DC zone rather than keeping it blended residential? And this amendment is basically pretty simple, to have 4-foot side yards instead of 5-foot side yards that's stipulated in the blended residential district. This is already being done in other municipalities, in Leduc, Spruce Grove, Edmonton. This is the standard that they have, and also is being contemplated in the land use bylaw that administration is currently underway. The reason why we can't just amend the blended residential district is because that's citywide or townwide. we only want to do this section for right now, and we're just a little ahead of the land use bylaw amendment, which is supposed to be presented to council sometime in the early new year in January. So if we waited till then, we're delaying development by a year. So we're just a little ahead of that amendment. The building form within the area is the same as what's approved in the ASP, so people next door would see single-family housing and smaller lots going anyway, which is what the approval is. It's just the one side yard is the only narrow lots, which also conforms better to the EMRB density targets, which just came out last year. So the housing form is more affordable, and yeah, so the benefit to the town is you have more people, more residents on the street, meaning more taxpayers to share costs of maintenance, making it cheaper per person because you do have a little smaller units. And this also helps that density with the EMRB, like I said, because then it's harder to sell apartment buildings. So the easiest way to help density is having a little more dense, low density area. So that's kind of what we've started here. It complies to everything that the ASP or the outline plan that's already in effect, and we look forward to any further questions you have. Unless Patrick would like to say something further.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Just on a point, and appreciate the comments that have come up on it. As Eric had mentioned, the reason, really the only reason for doing the direct control is we're a little ahead of the update to the land use bylaw. And as a developer here in the town for the last 7 years, we've been working with administration, and there's always been the idea to update the land use bylaw. With the annexation that happened in the town, and then the update of the municipal development plan, following the process and stuff, the land use bylaw then follows afterwards. So if there wasn't the annexation, maybe the land use bylaw would have been done last year or the year before. So we're just a little ahead of where they are. As Eric had mentioned, we do have a stage ready to go. The way that the market is, we want to make sure we capture that market. The intent of the zone does not change anything. We really like the blended residential. I believe we were the first development in the town that did the blended residential. Once it came up, we thought it was a wonderful idea. We still think it is. So all we're doing again is adjusting that side yard, and as little as it may sound, going from a 5-foot side yard to a 4-foot side yard, it does work towards the affordability and the product. So we're able to keep our price of the lots the same as last year when you sell a lot on a front foot basis. So by going from 5-foot to 4-foot, you're actually saving 2 feet, and that's at $3,800 a front foot. So that's over $7,500, $7,600. By being able to do that, keeps the lot price the same. It keeps affordability and keeps people that are interested in living in Beaumont and Forest Heights there. But in terms of the design, in terms of the park, the playground, the land use, nothing has changed on that. We want to make sure the integrity of the development remains, and we're very comfortable that this does. So welcome any questions if there are, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the applicant from members of council? No, seems pretty clear. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
This evening. Is there anybody in the audience tonight wishing to speak in favor of the proposed bylaw? All right. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to the proposed bylaw? No. Lastly, is there any person that deems themselves to be affected who wishes to be heard on this matter? All right, the public hearing is closed. All right, next public hearing is for bylaw 921-18 land use bylaw text amendment. Ms. Dargy and Ms. Raymond. So, I will declare the public hearing open and state that the hearing is being held pursuant to sections 230, 606, and 692 of the Municipal Government Act 2000 as amended. And would Legislative Services like to speak to it? Mr. Adden.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to members of council and the public. The purpose of bylaw 921-18 to amend the land use bylaw to delegate decisions on development permits to the Development Authority for all existing direct control districts that have regulations. Notice of the public hearing was given in writing to all landowners in the applicable direct control districts and Ladue County. The public hearing notice was advertised in the local newspaper on July 13th and 20th, 2018. Any written submissions received are included in the public hearing agenda package, and there's currently nothing to read into the record at this time.
Thank you very much. Ms. Dargy.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. Public hearing is being held tonight as stated by Legislative Services. So direct control districts are unique from standard districts in a land use bylaw. The Municipal Government Act allows council to decide on development permit applications or to delegate that decision to the development officer in direct control districts. This proposed amendment will delegate the development officer to be the deciding authority on development permits in direct control districts that have specific regulations. This will streamline decision-making processes and enhance service delivery to applicants. Council will remain the development authority on direct control districts that do not have specific regulations, or if a variance to specific direct control regulations is required. Delegating development authority to the development officer for direct control districts with specific regulations is consistent practice among other municipalities, including Spruce Grove, Edmonton, Leduc, Fort Saskatchewan, and St. Albert. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them at this time.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions from members of council? Oh yeah, I got a couple. Walk me through this. So it's a direct, so council would set up the direct control district, approve the regulations within the direct control district, and then authority for development would be delegated to the development officer?
That's correct. And any direct control districts currently in the land use bylaw that have specific regulations would be delegated to the development authority where it isn't currently done so. So the number of permits that we've been bringing forward to council in those districts, that would no longer occur. They would just be decided on by the development authority. We do have a number of direct control districts in the land use bylaw that do not have specific regulations. They're open-ended. So that means that decision-making authority is entirely up to council. Those permits, any permits on those lands would still come to council.
Okay, so those ones with the regulations in it would essentially act like any other designated land use bylaw, like BR.
That's correct.
Okay, I'm okay with that. And when would we get any type of notification that this was going on, or just if there was a problem and a variance needed to be had?
If there is a variance to the regulations, then it would come to council for council's decision. If the permit meets all of the application, all of the regulations, it would just be approved in the normal course.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions from members of council? Councillor Danlick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Ladies, a quick question. So I'm reading this here, and you're talking about the development officer may only approve a permit and so on. Is this giving the development officer more discretion and more authority and more responsibility by downloading this responsibility to them? Am I reading this correctly? They're getting a little more discretion and more authority than their current role would possess?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Danlick. No, it doesn't give them more authority. Currently, the development officer decides on all permits in the land use bylaw that are not in direct control districts. What this does is specifically delegate that authority to the development officer in direct control districts, because council, without that delegation, is the deciding authority. So what you're doing is giving that delegation specifically to the development officer so they can continue to do the same job they would do with any other district. Okay. So there's not more or additional power. It's just for that district, they get to use the same power.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. Is there anybody in the audience tonight wishing to speak in favor of the bylaw? Okay, you're either for, opposed, or deemed affected. So yeah, if you just got questions, when we get to deemed affected, come on up. Once again, is there anybody in favor, speak in favor of the bylaw this evening? Anybody opposed to the bylaw wishing to speak to council tonight on this matter? Any person deeming themselves to be affected who wishes to be heard?
Does it matter which one I sit at?
No, they're both live.
My name is Kyla Horvat, and I live at 6411 57th Avenue in Beaumont. So my question is, by doing this, would this speed up the process of getting your permit approved? Like if it goes to in the municipal, sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. So it would speed up the current direct control district applications because they would no longer have to come to council. They would be determined by the development authority. So we wouldn't have to schedule them on a council agenda meeting. We wouldn't have to hold a public hearing. So that timeline would be significantly reduced on direct control district applications.
So our home, for example, we submitted a permit request for a deck, right? It took about 3 weeks to hear that it was complete, but we still had to wait another 20 days to get final approval or disapproval. I'm just curious, if this goes through, what would the typical landowner in a, what did you call it, sorry?
A direct control district.
Control district. What timeline would it look like for them to get a final approval to go ahead with building?
I'm going to go to Ms. Mohammed.
Thank you, Your Worship. So permits are received and processed in the volume that they're received at. So it's very difficult to give a baseline. Summer is our busiest season, so it all depends on how many permits come in and to how fast that they're processed. So one day the answer could be, it'll take us 2 weeks to process this. The next day we get 100 housing permits that come in, then it pushes it off several more weeks. So that's very difficult to answer. But what we can say is that by having the development authority, as Ms. Darjay has said, being able to approve the direct control district, it takes the step out of bringing it to council, but a permit would still have to enter into that process just like all other permits do, and it all depends on how many we've received of the day, pretty much. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else wishing to speak to council on this matter tonight? All right, hearing none, the public hearing is now closed. Thank you. All right, our third public hearing of the evening tonight is for bylaw 925-18, land use bylaw text amendment, adding education services as a discretionary use to C2 commercial districts. So at this point, the public hearing is now open, and the hearing is being held pursuant to sections 230, 606, and 692 of the Municipal Government Act 2000 as amended. Ms. Naradin.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to members of council and the public. The purpose of bylaw 925-18 is a proposed amendment to add education services as a discretionary use in the C2 commercial district and add section 8.11.7 additional development regulations for education services. Notice of the public hearing was given in writing to all landowners in the C2 commercial district, Ladue County, and the school boards. The public hearing notice was advertised in the local newspaper on July 13th and 20th, 2018. Any written submissions received are included in the public hearing agenda package, and there's currently nothing to read into the record at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Dargy, Ms. Raymond, Ms. Dargy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, and Your Worship, members of council. So a public hearing again is being held tonight as stated by Legislative Services. Administration has been actively working with the Francophone School Board to determine an acceptable location to accommodate their need for additional space. The school's main facility is currently located in a temporary location at 5505 Magasin Avenue, and they are currently over capacity. With a lack of suitably sized municipal reserve parcels, other options needed to be considered for expansion, including leasing additional space in nearby commercial developments. These lands are currently districted C2 Commercial District, and education services are currently neither a permitted nor a discretionary use within that district. In order to accommodate this proposed use, the land use bylaw must be amended. Administration therefore recommends that education services be added as a discretionary use to enable not only the Council Scholar Centre Nord to move into a commercial space, but to also allow vocational schools or trades training options and other types of educational services to be located within this district. Administration recommends this use be discretionary, as there may be incompatibilities with existing adjacent developments which will need to be reviewed prior to issuing a permit. Additional regulations have been incorporated to match those found in the DC 110 Temporary Francophone School District to limit permits for education services to a maximum approval period of 10 years. The purpose of these additional regulations is to ensure that the school site remains an interim solution until a permanent school is built for the Francophone School. The Francophone School has submitted a written submission addressing some of Council's concerns noted at the last meeting, and administration is supportive of the inclusion of education services into the C2 Commercial District to accommodate the expansion of the Francophone School for the fall of 2018. And should you have any questions, I would be happy to answer any of them at this time.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members of council this evening? Councillor Van Newkirk.
Well, thank you for the presentation, through your worship, to administration.
Sorry, thought I turned you on.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, through yourself to administration. Under education services, one of the other education type services that we already have in Beaumont is something like a tutoring service like an Oxford or a Kumon and stuff like that. Does this open the door for those types of service providers to also work in this district, or would they have been allowed despite this addition?
They would be allowed under this use.
So the addition of education allows them there as well?
Yes.
Okay, and so without this addition, they wouldn't have been able to go there?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I think it's important to note that too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from members of council this evening? Thank you very much for your presentation this evening. And all right. Is there anybody wishing to speak in favor of this bylaw this evening? Hearing none. Is there any member of the audience wishing to speak in opposition to the bylaw this evening? Is there any person in the audience that deems themselves to be affected who wishes to be heard by council on this matter tonight? All right, hearing none, public hearing is closed. Okay. Agenda item 6A, registered presentations, we have none. So which brings us to 6B, unregistered presentations. If there is any member of the public in the audience tonight that wishes to address council, just a reminder that this is not a town hall meeting. He can come up, address council. If it's quick, we'll try and answer it. If not, we'll take some contact information, pass it on to admin, and go forward. Is there anybody that wishes to address council on any matter this evening? All right, next item up, business item 7A, Regional Transit Services Commission Memorandum of Understanding. Ms. Lewin.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. Tonight I just wanted to talk to you about the Regional Transit Services Commission. So on June 4th, 2018, a joint letter from the City of Edmonton and the City of St. Albert was sent to all mayors belonging to the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board. In the letter, there was a request made for all the regional partners to sign on to the Memorandum of Understanding and to join the Regional Transit Services Transition Team. So the MOU was intended to create a task force to explore and identify the governing principles and mandate of a regional transit service entity. This MOU incorporates the term, provisions for adding parties, a vision for the Regional Transit Services Commission, revenue principles, governance structure, transit services, transition, and mutual efforts. So there was a three-phase implementation plan that was developed. So phase 1 was the governance design, and that was completed by the City of St. Alberta and the City of Edmonton. Right now they are in phase 2, which is the entity establishment and the transition, where they have asked all the regional partners to join in. And then phase 3 will be the service operations. So on June 29th, 2018, the Edmonton Metro Region Board hosted a workshop with all of the members to discuss that joint letter that was sent, the Commission MOU and the three-phase implementation plan. And Mayor Stewart and myself and someone else from administration has attended that workshop and got all the information that's in your package tonight. So basically we are asking tonight that Council give approval to join the Transit Service Commission by signing on to this MOU.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lewin. Do I have a member of Council willing to make the motion? Councillor Stout.
So moved, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. As we go to discussion on the motion, I just have a couple of comments. As Ms. Lewin stated, we did attend the workshop on this, and it was actually kind of fun watching Mayor Iveson and Mayor Herron stand up and sell it to the room. It was almost like they were trying to sell us a used car. It should be noted, a couple of points on this is that one, there is currently no cost to our municipality to join in phase 2. They managed to receive a fairly hefty grant as they go through setting up these phases. It should also be noted that this does not in any way bind us to actually being part of phase 3, operating as a transit commission. This is basically the working group to set up how it's going to be done and how it's going to move forward in the region and move forward. So the options are we can join or not. If we don't join, or if we want to join later, we've had no say at the table and we'll be behind. If we sign on the MOU now and get our representatives on the committee, and then we can have a say and a stake in how that's going to be shaped. And then when phase 3 comes around for implementation, we can discuss whether it makes economic sense or sense from a service standpoint for our municipality at that time. So I'm going to recommend that we get on board and go forward, but I open up the floor to further comments from members of council. Any comments from members of council? Councillor Moncalfe-Swain. You're on. What?
Thank you. I'm having trouble with the mics today.
Yeah.
Your Worship, thank you. My question is around timing of this. So we're asked to sign on to this this MOU. Was there a time commitment or time period that they're asking us to get back to them by?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Moncalfe-Swain. When we were at that workshop, Mayor Iveson did request, I guess, for each municipality to try to get an answer to them in the coming weeks, and that was at the end of June. So I do know that at least 6 other municipalities in the region have already gone to their councils and have been approved to sign on to the MOU. But I believe they're also going back to their councils in August or September to talk about this transition piece.
Okay, then a follow-up. So just following through the timelines, we're in the middle of phase 2 right now. I appreciate the signing on to the MOU means that there's no budget commitments. But going to phase 3, that's when it would come back to budget. So are we anticipating that we could be coming to budget with this request this year, or would this be further a couple of years down the road until we actually had those budget discussions about whether we participate in phase 3?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Moncalfe-Swain. So at this time, they're suggesting that it'll be about a 1 to 2 year window for this Phase 2 piece. So the likelihood of us coming back to council for any sort of budget discussions would likely be for the 2021 budget.
Okay, so when we say we're in progress, we mean we're right at the start of this in progress piece. Okay,
yes.
Thank you. The reason I ask is I wouldn't want us to sign on to an MOU and then, 6-8 weeks later, we're in budget and have that conversation. I'm very supportive of transit, as you know, and I support the Mayor's position to sign on to this, but I wouldn't want us to sign on to this and then have to get into a budget discussion, and if we didn't have support from Council, I thought that would be a little bit awkward. So those are all my comments. I'm supportive and I'll be voting in favour of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship to Ms. Lewin. As I understand correctly, there's no budget commitment at this stage for the...
That's correct. All the costs
to sign on to the MOU. And like Councillor Munkoff-Swain, I'm very much in favour of Beaumont having a voice at this particular table. One thing that concerns me slightly, and could we bring the screen forward to page 68 of 228, which is part of the draft memorandum, if that's what it is. I just wanted to point to features 6.3 and 6.4. 2/3 majority of all board members and a 2/3 majority of all available weighted vote factors required to make it for the board of directors to make a decision. And then the next section, 6.4, refers to FF, financial contribution factor, and RF, ridership contribution factors. Would I be, now I don't expect a precise answer to the next question, which is, what would those numbers be for Beaumont? I am assuming that they're going to be very small compared to not only Edmonton and St Albert, but also Fort Saskatchewan or City of Leduc. Would that be correct? And do you have any feeling for what the order of magnitude those numbers might be in?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Stout. At this time, we don't have any numbers. We haven't even started talking about what the financial piece looks like. I imagine once the Board of Directors is established, those are going to be discussions that will be had at that table before anybody actually signs on for committing to finances.
Yes, yeah. But the actual numbers will be, the Beaumont numbers will be very small, which means although we have a vote at this table, it carries very little weight compared to, let's say, St Edmonton or St Albert or Edmonton.
Yes, I suppose it would be.
Okay, that's just what I wanted to confirm.
Yeah, it's you still need a 2/3 majority of, it's a double majority, so you still need 2/3, and then you'll need, it'll be like the EMRB, you're going to need the big players to go along with you.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking, that unless St Albert or Edmonton is in favour or and we support them, then it's unlikely to ever be passed. Effectively, the two largest players will effectively have a veto.
Yeah, and to be fair, they haven't even decided whether or not it's just going to be the commuter services or it's going to encompass every item of transit within the region. So there's still a ton of work to be done for this committee over the next year or two. So,
thank you.
Councillor Van Nieuwkerk.
Hello, thank you for the presentation to date here tonight. My question is around SmartFare. Now, that was the other regional piece that's brought forward around the transportation. And does the SmartFare follow this discussion, or is a SmartFare on the back end of the decisions made in these discussions and this group? Or is it just a separate piece of the whole transit pie in the region?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Van Nieuwkerk. So at this time, we're still working on SmartFare as a separate project. There are, I believe, all the transit authorities within the metro region are participating in the SmartFare program at this time. So that'll work kind of on the side, but with the commission, everything, once that would all start, the SmartFare would be implemented as well. We're looking at a 2020 start date for the SmartFare, so it will already be on all of the buses, and then it would just be a matter of the commission then if that was going to happen, then it would just fall into as soon as the commission started working.
Yeah, because that did have a dollar amount tagged onto it, and whereas this didn't. So as far as tonight goes, I think the point made by Councillor Stout is completely fair about the, who votes where and how much say, but I very much think it's important that Beaumont has a voice at the table, and I support it for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Daniluk.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. I have a question, maybe I'll answer, Ms. Lewin, but possibly I'll be able to, or Mayor Stewart might be able to provide some background. But I noticed that the City of Edmonton got a $3.7 million grant for this initiative. Is this just to run the commission, or is that involving any hardware like buying buses and so on, or just to run the commission itself and do all the planning? It's a lot of money, $3.7 million. I'd like to have an idea where that money is supposed to be spent, or that was ever discussed in the previous meeting. Just a curiosity question. It's not a critical thing for tonight, but just curious about where that money is going to be used.
That grant is going to be used to do phase 2, have these meetings, set up the commission, and get it to an operating state.
Okay. Page 62. Page 62.
There you go.
Sorry, I missed that page. I apologize. I'm doing my reading. Thank you.
No worries. Any further questions of Ms. Lewin this evening? Any further comments from council on this matter? All right, so hearing none, we'll call the vote. Oh, hang on. 1 second. Okay. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. As was pointed out by the CAO this evening, once we've passed that, we do have to appoint 2 members to the committee. Councillor Munkoff Swain and myself have both expressed an interest in being on this committee. Are there any other members of council that would like to sit on this transit committee? Or Councillor Daniluk.
Thank you, Richard. I serve an alternate if necessary.
Fair enough. So I'll move that myself and Councillor Munkoff Swain get appointed to the committee with Councillor Daniluk as an alternate. Discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none, call the vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Lewin.
Thank you.
Which brings us to item 8A, bylaw 921-18, land use bylaw text amendment, development authority in direct control districts for second and third reading. Ms. Dargy and Ms. Raymond.
The Three Musketeers, if you bring Joanna's up.
Thank you, Worship and members of council. Earlier this evening, a public hearing was held regarding an amendment to the land use bylaw to delegate decisions on development permits to the development officer for all existing direct control districts that have regulations. No submissions opposed to this amendment were presented, and administration recommends that council give second and third reading to bylaw 921-18.
Thank you very much. Can I get a motion for second reading? Councillor Munkoff Swain.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion?
If I'm still on, I'll keep going. Firstly, thank you to administration for doing the background research on the other municipalities and how they handle this. I asked for that last time and you provided it, which is great. I'm very supportive of this. I've had some comments and discussion with many residents about this, and I think there's always a concern about any time there's change or perceived authority given to administration that council can't control. But keep reminding people that our role, council's role, is around governance and setting the vision for Beaumont, and admin's role is to execute that vision and run the day-to-day operations. And so, we keep talking about streamlining regulations, and this is one that I think makes complete sense. The more that we delegate up here back to administration, who actually has a background in this, and not up to us, who aren't the subject matter experts, the better. And I think this goes a long way to help streamline those processes. So I respect the comments and concerns from some of the residents, but I think this is a really good step forward and good thought process to bring this forward to us. And I'm glad we're nearly there anyway.
Thank you. Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. Through your Worship to Ms. Dargy and Ms. Raymond. If this becomes a direct control district from blended residential, does it then cease to be a direct control district again when the new land use bylaw is passed? If the new land use bylaw supports the forms that are being permitted on the direct control district. Do you understand my question? Am I phrasing this clearly?
Thank you, Worship. Through to Councillor Stout. So I just want to make sure, I think you're getting two different items mixed up.
Okay.
Forest Heights is a direct control district that was before council.
Yes.
As well. This amendment would just delegate the approval authority in all direct control districts to the development authority.
Yes, I'm getting the items mixed up.
Okay.
I'll blame jet lag.
And so did you want that question answered now or at the time at Forest Heights?
Sure, let's ask that question now, and then we can...
Well, let's concentrate.
No, I can't.
Let's concentrate on the subject at hand.
I can't. No.
We'll bring that one back up at the appropriate moment.
So I'll save that for later. Okay. My apologies.
Councillor Daniluk.
Thank you, Worship. Gotta love jet lag, eh? It's a great thing. Thank you very much. I echo Councillor McGough-Swain's comments. I support this this bylaw and what we're trying to accomplish here. My only question might be is, I know we're trying to streamline the process, and as one concerned citizen asked about the process being streamlined and we can't control the volume, I get that, but my only concern is that if we are doing this to streamline the process, make our citizens of Beaumont experience more friendly and all that good stuff, how are we going to maintain that we've actually accomplished that? I'm not asking for that tonight, but just asking the administration to be cognizant of, if we are trying to streamline something, can we hopefully come back in 6 months or a year from now saying this was successful, application process time has been cut by 30% or 20%, or the case happens to be, is some kind of way of going back to the public and saying we are streamlining the process and we have accomplished that, and here's the results at some point in the future. Not today, obviously, but sometime down the road. I would ask the administration to be able to quantify as best they can this has been a successful initiative after it's been given to the test of time. Thank you.
Ms. Raymond.
Through your worship to Councillor Daniluk. I just want to chime in here on that note that a direct control district doesn't have certainty for a landowner. While you have, or an applicant, while you have regulations that are set up and approved underneath the bylaw that establish that direct control, there still is no certainty for that person going through the process that their application would be approved. So they would come to council, they get they get it introduced, then they have the public hearing, at which point you could still say no to them. Whereas the development officer, if they were the development authority, is actually bound. If they followed all those conditions and the regulations, they would get their permit. So yes, it would make it easier for them in that regard.
Councillor Van Newkirk.
Hello, thank you. A couple of comments, or a comment and a question. I guess Councillor Monkoff-Swain said it very eloquently, but I do want to say directly that, it directly links back to the council strategic plan as pointed out here for, good governance, fiscal responsibility, efficient use of tax dollars by streamlining decision-making processes to enhance service delivery for residents. It was definitely a topic of concern and addressed. Thank you. Second part is a question, and it's along the same lines as Councillor Daniluk was going, but a little bit different, and here goes. If there is a grievance because a decision didn't go the way someone was looking through they were turned down, what is the form or process for the applicant to bring that grievance forward, or is it said and done and the authority's ruling just holds and that's it?
Thank you, Worship. Through to Councillor Van Newkirk. As with any development permit application that's decided by the development officer, applicant has an opportunity to appeal it to the Subdivision Development Appeal Board. The board's decision on that can only be, is limited to whether or not the development officer followed council's direction. So if the development officer did not follow council's direction in the direct control district, the SDAB should overturn the development authority's decision and decide in favor of the applicant. If a direct control district application were to come to council for decision, there is no appeal mechanism. So if they're not happy with council's decision, that is the decision. So this actually gives them another opportunity by having the development authority approve that decision to have another appeal body. Whereas if it were to come to council, there is none.
Good, thank you. And just for clarification, the Subdivision Appeal Board is a regional board?
To clarify, the Subdivision Development Appeal Board is a board of council and resident members. So they have to be a resident of Beaumont.
Oh, so
it's a committee.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And so there's no, just following down this rabbit hole. So if they wanted to come for, if they got overturned and wanted to come to a variance, could they then bring it to council, or is that the end of the matter?
So if they wanted to vary a regulation in a direct control district, they would have to come to council because the development officer would not be able to vary the regulation.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Seeing no other requests from council to speak, I'm very supportive of this. I'm very happy when the experts take it on, and it will run like any other land use designated in our municipality. And so I will be supporting this tonight as we move forward and going on. So if there are no further questions of administration or no further comments, I will call the vote on second reading. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Can I get a motion for third reading? Councillor Van Newkirk.
So moved.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? And that also carries unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, that brings us to item 8B, bylaw 925-18, land use bylaw text amendment, adding education services as a discretionary use to C2 commercial district for second and third reading. Once again, Ms. Dargy.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. Public hearing was held earlier this evening to amend the land use bylaw to accommodate education services as a discretionary use in the C2 commercial district and to add additional regulations into section 8.11.7. No further submissions were made, and administration supports second and third reading of this bylaw.
Thank you very much. Do I have a councillor prepared to move second reading this evening? Councillor Danlock.
So move, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councillor Van Newkirk.
No, I'm still
You're
on.
Still on, so.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I was just pointing out that I was still on.
Okay. No comments? Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Monkoff-Swain.
I just indicate again, thank you for administration for working with the school on this, and to the residents and the population that use that facility. We appreciate that. The patience of trying to get to a permanent site. We heard from not only the school board but several other needs of schools, and we'll see some applications coming up later on that does identify school sites. So we're committed on council I'm committed on council to help get there, but I'm glad that we found at least a temporary solution. Not ideal, but also wanted to acknowledge the letter from the gentleman who clarified a lot of questions and helped answer a lot of questions. So I think that was certainly appreciated. So I'm certainly in support of this bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to echo Councillor Monkoff-Swain's comments. Thank you very much for your presentation this evening. I too was, I got to admit, I was a bit on the fence putting a school into a mall. And so I'm glad it's going in as discretionary use, but the one letter from the school board that outlined how they were going to operate and their intentions and how they were going to operate sort of alleviated most of my concerns. And so I will be very in support of this evening. One quick question, why 10 years?
Your worship, that mirrors the same regulations as in the current district that they're located in, in the DC 110 Francophone School District.
It just seems like an awfully long time. Having said that, I know how slow government moves.
Trying. Yeah.
All right. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Can I get a member of council to move third reading? Councillor Stout.
So moved, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Van Newkirk? Are you just moving the motion? Yeah. Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Okay, that brings us to item 8C, bylaw 919-18, Forest Heights Phase 8 Land Use Bylaw Amendment for second and third reading. Mr. Wong and Ms. Raymond.
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Your Worship, and member of council. A public hearing was held earlier this evening. Administration supports this amendment as this complies with higher order plans such as Edmonton Metropolitan Region Growth Plan and the Municipal Development Plan. It also conforms to the Forest Heights Outline Plan, which identifies the site for low-density residential development. The purpose, as mentioned, is to allow development of small lot, single-family, and semi-detached housing development. The proposed direct control district is based on the existing BR blended residential district with minor modification to the lot width and side yard requirements. The proposed direct control district regulations do not fit within the standard district within Beaumont's land use bylaw, and therefore would require a site-specific land use district to regulate the land use development within a specified area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there a member of council willing to move second reading this evening? Councillor Daniluk.
So moved, Your Worship. Thank you.
Sorry. Is there any discussion on the motion or questions for administration? Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think you know the answer, what the question is going to be because I've already asked it. But I will rephrase it. In the event of the new land use bylaw being passed and this direct control district then conforming with the blended residential or some other category within that new land use bylaw, does it cease to be a direct control district, or is there a process necessary for that to happen?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Stout. The process for that is that it'll just be updated as part of the land use bylaw. It will cease to become its own direct control district, but we don't need to go through any special process to do that. It'll be all encompassed.
So it will automatically cease to become a direct control district, cease to be a direct control district.
We will be looking at how we're going to incorporate that into our new land use bylaw. All of our other areas of town will also be in need of very similar type things, and we will be taking direction from how this goes.
Good, thank you. Because my only reservation really about this was that I don't want to see a multiplication of direct control districts as we vary each little thing to take account of changing circumstances. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other further questions from members of council this evening? No, thank you very much. All right, so seeing no other discussion, call the vote. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Do I have a member of council that was willing to move third reading this evening? Councillor Monkoff-Swain.
So moved, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, call the vote. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, it being 8 o'clock, call a quick 5-minute recess, sorry. I need to get up. I'm not sandbagging it. My back is killing me. I got stuck on a plane today. I can still get there by
The Elon NSP is approximately 64 hectares, 1/4 section, and propose a variety of land uses, including low-density residential, medium-density residential, commercial, and urban village, and open spaces. This plan also provides land for a school site to meet the community's needs to accommodate growing student populations. The school site is designed to be expanded in the future to allow additional field space and a second school. The neighborhood structure plan intends to accommodate a population of over 3,600 population with a density of about 43 dwelling units per net residential hectares. The Elon NSP is in alignment with all higher levels plans and policies, including the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Growth Plan, Beaumont's Municipal Development Plan, and the Elon ASP Area Structure Plan. As a member of the municipality of the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board, new neighborhoods in Beaumont must meet all the requirements of the growth plan, including a density of 35 dwelling units per net residential hectares, to ensure that growth within the region is responsibly managed through compact and contiguous development. Administration is recommending approval of the first reading of this plan as it meets a variety of community needs and is in compliance with all higher level plans and policies. The Elon NSP will help Beaumont to continue to grow into a complete community that provides a variety of options and amenities to its residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there a member of council tonight willing to move first reading? Councillor Stubb.
So moved, Your Worship.
Are there any clarifying questions of administration? Councillor Van Newkirk.
Hello, thank you for the presentation. A lot of information here. Bigger picture question that isn't really spelled out in here. Just for clarification purposes, economic development is important. Changing our ratio from 95/5 and angling towards something that includes more commercial / light industrial is top of mind in every conversation we have. How do we ensure that 80/20 or something like that is better or achievable in the long run future in this area structure plan? Is there anything more that we need to consider at this stage to make sure that we've set the stage for not handcuffing ourselves for that type of development in the future? I respect that it's big picture ASP, but I just asked the question to see, you know, where are we at with that thought process? If we want it, we have to plan for it.
Yeah, for this NSP is basically one of the 8 neighborhoods in the ASP area, and the overall the ASP there are various commercial areas too, but embedded in this NSP there is an urban village, which is a mixed use consisting of commercial, residential, and that would be like an urban village concept. You see at the southwest corner there is the big circular road, and actually is connecting to the neighborhood to the south in the future. And also there is a site specific that is a commercial site at the southeast corner of the neighborhood. So that will be also encouraging more commercial developments in this particular NSP neighborhoods. So.
Through your worship, to chime in on that question here, Councillor Van Newkirk. Through our future growth plan and the MDP that we had undertaken, we actually determined how much commercial we needed in order to continue to grow. We developed our MDP with those ratios in mind. Elon also did some market analysis work to determine how much commercial could actually be supported, because we could develop or designate all the commercial land that we wanted that would still not be developed. So this is something that the market could actually bear, is what the developer thinks. So.
Thank you.
Follow up? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's important for everyone to understand that, and that's the point I wanted to raise, is that when these are put together, they're put together with a lot of thought. You know, there's a lot of planning that goes into it, and it isn't willy-nilly. It's educated, it's precise, and it's done for a reason. You hate to be on the back end of something and say, oh, we didn't plan well enough at the beginning to achieve what our desired targets were, and that's definitely not where we're at here. So thank you for that comment.
Thank you very much. Are there any further comments from members of council this evening? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Someone else to chime in.
Follow up.
One issue that has arisen when speaking with residents about developing the land in question in general is the idea of competing downtowns. I'm not sure that this is the time to bring up that or to comment on that, given the nice, I forget what you called it, the loop.
The urban village.
The urban village that, that design down there. We're putting a lot of work into the Centreville plan right now. And then, in time, we are going to have a urban village down there, which is also going to be a desirable thing. And I don't know if there's any comments from administration on that particular competing downtowns ideas.
Through your worship to Councillor Van Newkirk, that was something that when this plan and the larger ASP was actually developed, that was a comment that had been raised at that time, and there are different uses that will be going in there in a different variety that will enable this area to have that complete community feel. This, as Elon builds out, it's eventually going to hold over 20,000 people, so you can think of it as Beaumont over again. And so being able to have those facilities still within a close proximity, but still be something different. Centreville is still always going to be unique. We are making sure through that project that it is a unique, desirable core for Beaumont, and we are definitely very conscious of that matter, and we are exploring how to make sure that that happens. Thank you.
Ms. Mohammed?
Thank you, Your Worship. So there's a couple of ways that you can prevent different nodes, is generally what we call them, from competing. And it has to do with one, design. So you could design these areas to delineate them from each other. But one of the things about downtowns don't become, or nodes don't become vibrant simply because of the buildings and the bricks and mortar that we put there. What makes them vibrant is the types of businesses that you attract and the programming that you put into them. So if you don't want them to compete, then program them equally and attract different types of businesses, to them. And that's a way to make both places vibrant, not necessarily competing, different in their own ways, attractive in their own ways. Thanks.
And I think that's probably the best take-home point, thank you for that, is that, we don't want to have one area succeed at the expense of another. And it's just something that we're, as you say, we're going to have to be cognizant of as we move forward. So thanks for the comments, I appreciate it.
Any further comments or questions from members of council? All right, thank you very much. I really do appreciate the presentation tonight and the supporting documentation. It's echoing Councillor Van Newkirk's comments. A lot of work has gone into it, and it's not been willy-nilly, and I'm really supportive of it, and hopefully we can pass first reading tonight and move forward. So, hearing no other comments, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Carried unanimously. That's first reading. Next item on the agenda tonight is bylaw 927-18, Lakeview Area Structure Plan. First reading. Once again, Mr. Wong.
Thank you. The department received an application for the Lakeview ASP Area Structure Plan. Lakeview is located in the most southeast quarter section of north of Highway 625 and west of Range Road 241. Lakeview Area Structure Plans provides the planning and servicing framework for a specific area in the municipality and must be compliant with the municipal development plan. The Lakeview Area Structure Plan is approximately 63 hectares and proposes a variety of land uses, including residential, mixed use, commercial, and open spaces. This plan also provides land for 2 schools to meet the community's growing student population. Lakeview plans to accommodate a population of 3,300 with a density of approximately 35 dwelling units per net residential hectares. Lakeview was originally presented to Council for first reading in February 13, 2018 as a neighborhood structure plan, if you recall. This was under the assumption that the plan would be subordinate to the higher level, our planned neighborhood, the consolidated area structure plan. The implementation approach within our planned area has been refined to ensure that existing development rights are respected, and the plan no longer provides guidance for greenfield unplanned areas, such as Lakeville. Accordingly, Lakeville has been reclassified as an area structure plan, and a new bylaw must be passed in order for the area structure plan to comply with the requirements of Section 633 of the Municipal Government Act. The Lakeville Area Structure Plan covers a relatively small area and provides appropriate policy to guide future planning and development, and therefore the neighborhood structure plan will not be required to redistricting and subdivision in this area. The Lakeville Area Structure Plan is in alignment with all higher level plans policies, including the Edmonton Metropolitan Regional Growth Plans and Beaumont's Municipal Development Plan. As a member municipality of the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board, a new neighborhood in Beaumont must meet all the requirements of the Metropolitan Regional Growth Plan to ensure that growth within the region is reasonably managed. Appendix 1 of the Area Structure Plan summarizes how this plan, the ASP, meets the policy of the Edmonton Metropolitan Regional Growth Plans. In addition, all new ASP for Greenfield area must be circulated to the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board for review and approval through the Regional Evaluation Framework to ensure compliance with the Edmonton Metropolitan Regional Growth Plan. Lakeville ASP will be circulated to the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Growth Board after the first reading. Administration is supportive of the Lakeville Area Structure Plan as it is in alignment with higher level plans and policies and add a variety of land uses to Beaumont and provide a diversity of housing options and additional commercial and school lands. The plan will also improve Beaumont's transportation system by enabling the continuation of the Outer Ring Road. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation this evening. Are there clarifying questions of council? Councillor Van Newkirk.
Hello, thank you for the information. That's great. Again, a fair bit of information in this package here. I'm going to keep this to clarifying comments kind of thing, as it is first reading. Two new school sites. Most comments and questions from residents are around that. Can administration speak to the school sites and what the roles of provincial municipal governments are as school sites are developed? Just general terms, just to remind everyone. Is that an applicable question for tonight?
It's more of a high-level question.
Yeah.
Not necessarily applicable to exactly.
Your Worship, through Your Worship to Councillor, is it the question is about how the school site is assembled and developed?
Yes. What would be the role of the municipality in getting a school site available? What is the role of the province once school boards and all that stuff go to put a school there? Okay.
The school site assembly is through the subdivision process. At the time of the subdivisions, the developer, the landowner, they are required to dedicate 10% of the gross developable land as a dedication as municipal reserve for future parks and school sites. So, and the land use statistics of the 13%, actually it is over the limit considering all the municipal reserve parks and greenways in the area. And so it will be dedicated to 10%, and the rest of the 3% will be using cash in lieu that the town collected through other processes, subdivision processes, to buy the additional 3%. Yeah.
So through Your Worship to Councillor Van Newkirk here, just to touch on Mr. Wong's comments there. School sites announcements are actually made by the province. When they are done, the school board gets notified that they've been successful. They've obviously had that in their capital plan, right? Top 3, whatever that happens to be. I believe we're top 1 or 2 actually in the Francophone School Board's capital plan for a new school. So that announcement comes through and then we find a suitable site. So we work with the school boards. We already are working with the school boards. Beaumont has a school site allocation committee. We meet yearly or more as needed. All the member school boards are part of that, as well as administration, to discuss what their needs are well in advance of these school site announcements that come through. So that's our role in assuring that when we're reviewing our ASPs and the NSPs, that we're getting appropriately sized parcels. We don't want to be caught in another spot where we don't have suitable school sites and then we're taking away park space and stuff like that to be able to put that down. So we work with the schools to be able to make sure that we are ready to rock and roll when those go, but they need to be a shovel-ready site, which means that they need to be serviced, have roads, and then be ready to be developed. There are different ways to do that servicing, but that's typically how that process goes. So government makes the announcement, we find the site, we work with the developer, the site gets serviced or it is serviced, and then that is that process to do that.
Quick follow-up?
Sure.
So just to confirm for everyone's knowledge, the type of school that goes in each spot is not something that council decides?
No, that's a provincial decision.
That's right. Just for clarification so everybody knows. Thank you.
Feeling some pressure, were you? Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. Through your Worship to Ms. Raymond and Mr. Wong. This is essentially the same plan that we passed in February the 13th, other than the fact that it's now an area structure plan instead of a neighbour structure plan. Or if it isn't, could you quickly redline it for me and tell me what any important changes are?
No, it is essentially the same plan, except that it has to amend the sections that it complies with the Edmonton Metropolitan Plan, because this plan will now get the approval through the regional reversion framework, the process for the regional board for the approval, and that is the only difference between the NSP and the ASP.
Some policy compliance section
Yes.
has been updated to accurately reflect its new status, and that's it, just a few words.
So essentially we've looked at all these diagrams and plans before.
Essentially the same.
And approved them. It's just that now they fit into different policy slots or...
It's now changing from a non-statutory plan to a statutory plan.
And I'm sorry, can you describe that difference to me then, please?
Sorry, that would be the difference between the area structure plan and the neighborhood structure plan. So we weren't simply able to just call it by a different name and pass it through underneath the previous bylaw. So we did have to bring that forward. There's no major changes or anything else to this. All
Thank
maps
you.
are the same.
I gotta admit, I had the same question. I was wondering if there was any differences. Are there any further comments or questions from members of council this evening? All right, hearing none. Can I get a member of council to make the motion to pass first reading? Councillor Stout.
So moved, Your Worship.
Discussion on the motion. Being that we already had it, all in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Bylaw, item 8F, bylaw 920-18, council code of conduct. First, second, and third reading, Mr. Harris.
Through your worship to council and the public, before you is administration's recommendation that first, second, and third reading, which requires unanimous consent of bylaw 9/2018 councillor code of conduct, be approved by council tonight. The municipality was required to have this bylaw in place by July 23rd, which was yesterday, but in discussions with municipal affairs, they gave us a one-day grace. The bylaw is consistent with that proposed through AUMA. The only addition is the timing of the meetings. Outside of that section, it's consistent, so the recommendations are before you.
Thank you very much. Is there a member of council willing to move first reading this evening? Councillor Danlock.
So move, Your Worship. Thank you.
Are there any questions of administration on this bylaw? Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. Through your Worship to Mr. Harris. Am I to understand that we need to pass all first, second, and third readings tonight in order to meet a deadline imposed essentially by provincial legislation? Is that correct?
Through the mayor to Councillor Stout, the rest of council and public, yes.
Follow up?
Yeah, I'm normally very much not in favour of moving, voting on all 3 readings in the same evening, and I noticed that we would need unanimous consent in order to do that, which I would not normally grant, especially in this case because I was absent when this was presented and have been unable to look at it until today in any detail. So I would, but what are the consequences if we didn't pass it? Then we're in violation of provincial legislation?
Through your worship, to Councillor Stout, the rest of council and the public, yes.
Thank you. So under those circumstances and those circumstances only will you get my support for doing all 3 readings on the same night.
Okay, that's a couple motions from now, but thank you. Any further discussions on the bylaw? All right, so hearing none, we'll call vote on first reading. All in favor? Carries. Is there a member of council willing to move second reading tonight? Councillor Stout.
So moved, Your Worship.
Discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor? Thank you. Carries unanimously. I will make the motion that council give unanimous consent to be able to pass third reading this evening. Any discussion on the motion? Yes, no?
I've already made my comments on this, yes.
Fair enough?
Yeah, I would not normally support you, but if we have to, we have to.
Fair enough. Therefore, all in favor? That carries unanimously. Is there a member of council willing to move third reading this evening? All right, I'll move third reading this evening. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Whew. All right, brings us to item 9, councillor and committee reports. Is there any member of council wishing to update council on any items in their portfolios this evening? All right, seeing none, I will move on to the CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Stout, I was going to weigh in at the last bylaw, but it just passes on probably for the benefit of the public more so than council. That code of conduct bylaw could be amended at council's discretion at any point in time. So if there's something that's not working for it, we can revisit it. So, but I appreciate the passing it because I know that you're not comfortable with that. A couple quick items. First of 2 cannabis open houses goes tomorrow night from 5:30 to 7:30 at the Aquafit Center. The second one is on July 29th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Centreville Market location. So welcome everybody to come out to provide their feedback on the land use bylaw changes surrounding the cannabis legalization. Great news, I thought, on the transit is being just another example of the regional work that this council has said they were going to start doing and has been doing, and it's got great possibilities. One other note is to congratulate my colleague to my left here before she clobbers me. So if I get up and run away, I will. Eleanor has been re-elected to the Canadian Institute of Planners Board of Directors. She's currently serving on that board. The CIP represents about 6,900 planning professionals across the country, and in their statement it talks about serving the voice of Canada's planning community. It was established in 1919, so 100 years coming up here. The board of directors is a 3-year term. But even more exciting is in September, the board will select a president for a 2-year term. Eleanor is the current president, and we wish her the best of luck, and you have our support as she is running again. So that's pretty exciting. And that's all I have. Thank you, Your Worship.
Are there any questions from members of council for the CO this evening? Councillor Van Newkirk.
had two quick ones. First one, through you, Your Worship, to the CAO. Would you be able to provide just a quick outline of what residents can expect at the upcoming 2 cannabis forums? Maybe just comment on the format and how the folks will be able to give their input and what mechanisms?
Mr. Hiltz.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. It is a come and go format, and there are display boards that are up. There will be discussion points on those display boards that people will be able to have discussions with those that are present, and basically right now, especially on the consumption side, it's exploratory. So we want to put ideas out there. We also want to receive ideas back. So it's going to be able to have that discussion back and forth with residents to be able to move forward on.
One quick follow-up. Yeah, just a quick follow-up. Thank you for that. I respect that there's been a survey process that we've went through, and these are open houses which are typically meant to be attended in person. Does there remain a mechanism for residents who can't attend one of the 2 upcoming to provide some thoughts?
Yeah. We'd be able to set something up. We haven't necessarily put that mechanism in place right now, but that is something that we'd be able to probably do based on some of the feedback that we do get from the residents.
Thank you. I have a second question, but if others have follow-up on this one, then that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Mr. Hiltz, to echo Councillor Van Nieuwkerk's comments, yes, we did have a survey. And this is some of the feedback I've received. We did have a survey. Several, if not all those questions were structured around the retail side and where that can go. There weren't many specific to the consumption side of things. And this is, given the fact that we're been through the retail side and now we're looking at the consumption things, I think residents are looking for more of a tangible way to be able to provide their feedback on the consumption piece. So I appreciate we do have a timeline that is coming up, but I would certainly look to administration to come back after the open houses. Part of our job as well will be to attend those open houses and ask those questions of residents ourselves. I'd like to see administration come back with some other options to be able to seek more definitive feedback specifically to consumption.
Mr. Hiltz.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. One of the issues that we will run into, and we can put out a survey and we can frame it, is that with the limitations of the Cannabis Alberta framework and the limitations of setbacks and things like that, it's going to be extremely difficult to be able to get a really good response back from public on a survey. We can do something with it, but we've had a really difficult time with this. So, yeah, we can.
Ms. Mojave.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry, I was busy typing away here because I just wanted to see if it was truly here. We have, as part of our website, something called Let's Talk Beaumont, and on there is a cannabis page, and provides a little background on what's going on in consumption and everything. And then there's a spot actually on there where the public can leave their comments with an email too, so we can collect it through this whole process.
And sorry, just to follow, I certainly appreciate that, and I get the complexities around it, but I find and have found that when it's more open to interpretation, when they're looking for residents to provide general feedback, we don't get as much. When we ask pointed questions, that's when we do. So I get the complexities, but I'd like to see something that speaks to some of the options that we discussed in the committee of the whole. Either we, ban smoking of cannabis in all public areas, either we or we are very liberal to that, or we look at combining tobacco, vaping, cannabis, and do the same thing. I think just by trying to simplify the options, and I appreciate there's complexity to it, but I find in my discussion people aren't quite sure whether we're talking about cannabis or we're talking about tobacco, vaping as well as part of this, because there was discussion about pulling that bylaw back. So I think we need to see some more tangible questions that are pointed directly to that would be the comment from me, and I'll leave it at that and leave that up to you guys to speak to or think about at a later date.
Councillor Danlick, unless... Councillor Danlick?
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you, Worship. A quick comment and then just a quick question. The open houses for the cannabis, I will be in Calgary on Wednesday for my job. I will be attending on Sunday. I know most of the council doesn't want to attend when we possibly can, but my dates were set before I knew the open houses were happening. But I will attend one of the two as best I can to represent council, and then other people will too, I'm sure. My question is to the administration, can we have an update, if possible, on the choice of the construction manager for the Aquafit 2 program, or project, pardon me? Has that been, how far along are in that process, please? Thank you very much.
Mr. Hiltz.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. Clark, builders have been engaged. We are at the RFP stage for the trades right now. So we will be working with them for the next month or so before we'll have a more of a definitive answer on the outcomes of the costs and schedule.
Councillor Van Newkirk.
Hello, thank you. Through your worship to the CEO. Just the second question here is a little bit bigger picture, but I think can have a little bit of a pointed answer. So one of the roles of council is to engage with residents and bring feedback from residents to council and work to alleviate some concerns and try and guide people to the right places to get some of the right answers. Often there are service-related issues or operational issues that come up and are brought up to council or in general public forums. And I was wondering if you might be able to speak to some of the mechanisms that currently exist and a little bit about how they work and how some of the service or operational pieces are directed internally so that the right people are answering those questions from the internal service lines and what that correspondence back to residents might look like. Just as a general outline to say, here, here's what we have in place and here's some of the types of feedback and this is how it's funneled through and this is how it comes back to you with some tangible answers, if that is clear.
Ms. Schwartz.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Van Newkirk. I think I understand the question. That'll pertain to how I answer it, I suppose. There's a number of ways to request work or complain about service or request service within the town. The predominant and the best one that works for our system right now is the service request tracker, which is on our website. It's right on the front page. It's got its own little selection. And then it's got a bunch of subcategories, including a general one. Allows you to go in and enter your data. That gives us the opportunity to, one, track the type of service request that we're getting in. If we if I identify a pattern, and it's obviously something we need to do. It allows us to contact the resident directly as opposed to having to go through a counselor. And for all of you counselors, that's why we've been directing you that way. Residents are also able to phone the front desk and they will be directed either to the request tracker or to the service area within town. We are in the process of improving modernizing our work order system through the asset management software and systems that we're implementing, which will allow us to better track work requests through to completion. We are also in the process of finalizing a customer response directive, if you will. In other words, when a customer contacts the help desk or anybody within town, they will be responded to within 24 hours. That's a practice right now, but it's going to be a directive. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. And follow-up?
Sure.
Yeah. So I think one of the important things, I think, is for us or for administration, I think, to continually tout those mechanisms to folks, just to communicate their availability and where they are and the types of things that they do. And it might be beneficial in the future to provide a little bit of feedback to council on the numbers of different types of requests you're getting in. Council does engage with residents very often, and as you've noted, administration has asked us to direct it to the service request tracker, but it might be good information to provide some tangibles and an update on some numbers at some point that you deem a good time to do that.
Thank you. Right, seeing no further questions of council, and there's no correspondence. Are there any notices of motion this evening? Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I have notice of motion. The notice of motion is that Council direct administration to send a letter addressed to the Chief Herald of Canada stating that the town of Beaumont wishes to receive armorial bearings from the Canadian Crown under the powers exercised by the Governor-General.
Thank you very much. Are there any other notices of motion this evening? All right, seeing none, there are no in-camera items that I'm aware of. We are adjourned.